Welcome to Artflakes on CBA TV. As usual, my name is Muti Olawi, the host and producer of this very unique show. If you are watching us for the first time, this is the only show where we explore the world within us and even beyond us, within Africa and beyond, through the literary binocular. And we get that from great writers around the world. Today, we're going to Singapore. And some of you got a lot of things about Singapore, and you only know it maybe as a developed country or a fast developing country in the Asian world. I don't have much to say about this, but when we get to the other side of the studio, we'll get to understand what this world is all about through a Singaporean writer. See you there. Welcome once again. Thank you for watching CBA. This is Artflakes, and today, as I've told you earlier, we shall be extensively discussing the world of the Singaporeans, the political, economic, social, and cultural lifestyle of these people. Now, this time, we are going into the world of Desmond Kon. Desmond Kon is a publisher, a creative writer, an academician, and a literature, so to speak. And he's an international award winner in these areas I've mentioned, in the area of teaching, in the area of publication, in the area of creative writing generally. A lot he has done. He's an inventor. He studied in Singapore and the United States, Harvard for that matter. This is a unique writer, a great writer to the core. I don't want to go deeply into his work. He has published a lot of work. So he has got a lot. If we're to discuss extensively about the life of Desmond, we will not stop today. So let's just go into the literary world of Desmond Kon to get to understand the life of the Singaporeans, because through his writing you get to know more about the world of this great writer. So there are two parts. For the first time, we just need to look at the general life of the Singaporean, then we'll go into his own world. So we use his own binocular to explore the world around him. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mutiu. Thank you for having me.
Not to waste much of our time, would you like to give us a little bit about the life or the world of the Singaporean? How was Singapore in the past? How is Singapore today?
Okay. Thank you so much, Mutiu, for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Modern Singapore dates back to its founding, in the 1800s. Archaeologists and historians have discovered there was actually a thriving trading settlement here as far back as 700 years ago. It was a kingdom then, and then there was the Majapahit and the Siamese, and then later on it came under the Malacca Sultanate and the Johor Sultanate. There was a Javanese epic poem, written in 1365, which did mention a settlement called Tumasik, and that translates possibly as sea town or seaport. And you can find the same word Temasek in the Malay annals as well, and that's the Sejarah Melayu, a very famous document in our history. In fact, in 1320, there was this Chinese trader who sailed all the way here and found Long Yamen, which translates as Dragon's Teeth Gate. And for us today, we imagine it to be Keppel Harbour, which is a very important port here that has really brought a lot of business to the country. But that's ancient Singapore, right? Last year was a very interesting year for the country because the country marked the Singapore bicentennial. And that commemorated the establishment of Singapore as a British colony. That was 1819, and that was the time Stanford Raffles was here. The next big historical milestone was the Japanese occupation. Unfortunately, during World War II, the Japanese actually occupied Singapore between 1942 and 1945, and there were lots of atrocities happening during that time. People suffered a lot. With the end of the Second World War, Singapore reverted back to British control, and the years that followed, there were great efforts at self-governance, right? Which is a good thing because the state wanted its own autonomy, and it did gain independence on 9th August 1965, and then what followed was a lot of nation building. All right, people needed jobs, people needed housing, so we had a lot of modernization happening then. The government focused a lot on public education as well as infrastructure, and today, Singapore is wonderfully successful, and we're very happy with that. I, for one, have always said that I'm very happy living here in Singapore. As a writer, it's extremely convenient for me. There's great food, great healthcare. The mall is within reach, the cinema is within reach, the doctors are all there, the post office is there, the banks are all around me, and it's just very, very efficient, and I love this country, right?
Let's talk about the literary world of the Singaporeans in terms of the language they use and the kind of literature common in Singapore.
Oh, okay. Well, there's this book that I'm going to share with you. It's a nice thin book, and it's
Okay.
it's a quaint book with 4 wonderful editors representing the 4 official languages in the country, and it gives a nice overview of the landscape of Singapore literature. I'm just going to read a little portion from the introduction.
Okay.
All right. Unlike many countries, Singapore does not have a national literature, despite having a national language, and thereby hangs a multi-ethnic, multilingual, multicultural tale. What happened with independence was there was a rejection of ethno-nationalism in favor of racial harmony, and this policy retained Malay as the national language, but at the same time institutionalizes and thus recognizes and preserves difference and diversity by enabling each component ethnic group to keep and maintain its own language and cultural identity. Singapore, therefore, has 4 Singapore literatures in the official languages of Malay, Chinese, Tamil, and English. So you'll see that we have 1 national language, but 4 official Singapore literatures. And this book, there's a chapter from an editor from each of those languages, covering the history of the literature in that mother tongue, right? So it's a good book which will give a nice sort of overview of what's happening and what has happened in this country.
So what are Singaporeans doing among themselves to boost the literary activities in the country, within the country?
Okay, it's very hard to reduce Singapore literature into any stock themes or subject matter. But if you spoke of images or motifs, yes, we see a lot of recurring sort of images of, say, HDB. That's public housing, and a majority of Singaporeans live in this public housing. The playgrounds there are very popular motif. The subway, or what we call the MRT here, people travel using the subway a lot, so we write about it a lot. The army is written a lot about because all the men in this country have mandatory military conscription. So it's a rite of passage for all of us. School life is very important because, in Singapore, the educational system is very rigorous. And we also love our shopping. So the malls appear a lot, hawker centers appear a lot because Singapore is known for its fabulous food. For example, Peranakan cuisine is unique to Singapore. There's chili crab, there's laksa, there's Hainanese chicken rice, nasi lemak, beef rendang. A lot of these local dishes keep appearing because they are so much a part of our cultural identity here. Um, Also, a lot of travel appears because Singaporeans like to travel outside of the country a lot. So a lot of writers talk about their travels. With regard to themes, I guess if you really do want to distill some of the themes that seem to crop up, pop culture, film and music are tropes that appear a lot in the writing here because we're a very global country. Um, Religious symbolism, intercultural symbolism, because we've got a melting pot of cultures here. So you see that a lot. It's very beautiful because people engage with each other in very empowering ways. Urbanity is a very important theme. The effects of development and progress, also how nature has been worked into the city. Singapore is known as being a garden state, the garden city, and there's nature everywhere, right? Interwoven with our infrastructure. Yeah, and there's a lot of sort of the local and the global that is being discussed in a lot of our literature. Identity is a very big topic too. For example,
Very.
ideas of gender and sexuality, cultural and religious identity, the migrant experience, body image, what it's like to be othered. So there are lots of themes that are covered, and every writer is unique in how they approach all these different themes.
In most countries, we have writers, established, non-established writers coming together to come up with something relevant, especially helping the young ones to grow. We have a few countries anyway. Do we have the same thing like that in Singapore?
That's a great question. Thank you so much. There are some, in Singapore, the literary scene has been bolstered by both, state initiatives as well as special interest groups, arts organizations. In the last 2 decades, the government has invested a lot of money into the literary arts, and the National Arts Council has done a fabulous job of sort of encouraging literacy and writing and reading in the country. The Singapore Writers Festival is like the annual flagship festival. It's an international festival. We fly in writers from all over the world, and it's really well attended. By Singlit happens every year, early in the year, and that is an initiative of the publishers, and the focus is on Singapore literature. So that's great because then Singapore literature and Singapore authors are being celebrated and being promoted during those 2 weeks. There is a venue here called the Arts House, which focuses a lot of its programming on literary activities. They are absolutely wonderful and divine. In July, Poetry Festival Singapore typically runs a weekend of only poetry-centered events, and they've got what they're really good at is bringing together poets of all the 4 official languages. So the people who helm it, like Eric Tinsay Vallis, a very good friend, Tan Chi Lei, Latha, Michelle Loh, they have made great efforts to bring writers of the different languages together during that weekend. There's also another organization, the Singapore Book Council, which is a very important organization. They also do a lot of outreach, and also they help manage very big literary awards in Singapore. For example, the Singapore Literature Prize, the Golden Point Award, the Hedwig Anwar Award, the Scholastic Book Award. Those are children's book awards. There are other big awards in Singapore, like the Epigram Fiction Prize and the National Book Award, So there's a lot of encouragement going on here. But when it comes to emerging writers, there's a nice literary organization called Lit Station, and they really encourage new voices and emerging voices to start getting interested in writing poetry and fiction. They run a annual Singpo Rimo, which is a month-long uh, focus on poetry, where every day um, a prompt is given on Facebook, and thousands of people in the country start engaging with the prompt and writing poetry every day. Right? They also run poetry.sg, which is a web resource that is a directory of all the Singapore poets here. So that's a great deal of stuff that happens here.
It's interesting to understand this because I'm really, really impressed from what you've just said that Singaporeans, especially the established one, are really helping the young ones to grow, supporting them. This is not common in some countries, especially those in the area of academics. They believe without following the rules, you cannot have anything relevant. You can't be given the voice. So it's difficult to see non-established young ones to grow faster in some countries. The people in academia, they prefer to be projecting themselves instead of mentoring the young ones to grow. They believe that mentorship stops in the classroom, so they don't really have a platform where they maybe boost the power, the creative power of the young ones without even paying anything. So this is important for me. So that's a bonus for Singapore. I love that. You've talked about the internal activities. I personally have observed that the whole world is very few when you talk about the literary work of art going on across the globe today. To see Singaporean writers or Singaporean literature thoroughly explored. People focus more on, when they say Singapore, they believe it's an industrial place in the Asian world that is unique. If you want to see machines or you want to see industrial setup, a country that changed overnight to an industrialized setting. That's what they will say. They will not talk about the literary activities of this country, so it's difficult for people to know more about the culture of the people. So what are Singaporean writers doing to project their image beyond the borders, beyond their countries, especially through the use of technology?
Um, yeah, we wish there was a sort of global interest in Singapore writing, right? Some writers have made a lot of headway abroad. For example, as recent as just a few years ago, Ovidia Yu has had a very good series of novels. Amanda Lee Koh is based in New York and here, and she's published a wonderful book. Rachel Heng, Charlene Teo, Issa Kamari, a cultural award recipient here, has had his novels translated into lots of international languages. But a lot of the writing still stays here. Because Singaporeans are interested in literature about their own community, right? But maybe I should talk a bit about the poets. The poets are very interesting here because in a lot of countries, poetry doesn't really matter. But in Singapore, the scene is very exciting. There are a lot of young voices, lot of emerging voices, and also lots of voices who've been around for quite some time. Aesthetically, the range is wonderful. There are very experimental writers. One of my favorites is Yao Kai Chai. He was the director of the Singapore Writers Festival for 4 years. And he actually co-edited this anthology with Edwin Thambu, one of our pioneering poets, And it's on the Merlion. So it's got lots of writers who wrote about the Merlion, which is a very important sort of iconic symbol in our city state. He is very experimental, and then we've got also more sort of state lyric poets like Yong Shu Hong, like Darrell W.J. Lim, Amanda Chong, Hao Guang, David Wong. They do fabulous work, and all their books are here, right? And they are in their 30s now, and they have made a wonderful name for themselves. So we're really seeing a lot of interaction between writers across the generations, from the 20-year-olds all the way to the 80-year-olds, and so that sort of dialogue and conversation is very, very exciting to see and witness. Some other writers I really adore include, Joshua Ip, Wei Kim Cheng, Aaron Maniam, Aaron Lee, Paul Tan, To Sian Min, Crispin Rodriguez, and then there's some spoken word performance poets who've also written books, and their writing crosses over beautifully from stage to page and page to stage. These include Pooja Nancy, Mark Nair, Ng Yi Sheng, Stephanie Chan, just fabulous writers, So Singapore is very cosmopolitan. There's lots of traffic here with people from all over the world, so there's great cultural exchange. For example, we've got quite a few Filipino writers now working in Singapore who've published books here, and they're doing very well, like Eric Tinsey Valles, Noel Diesu, Mix Bravo Dot, Lawrence Ipil, Rodrigo de la Pina Jr. We also have other writers from the West, like Barry Sherwood. I adore this book by him. There's John Gresham from Australia, wonderful book by him. And we've got also this book that just came out last year, a heartbreaking book by Linda Collins from New Zealand, who is a copy editor with our daily here, the Straits Times. She wrote this beautiful book. And Elaine Chew, who has been all over the world, is Malaysian, but is now here in Singapore. This book I reviewed, it's just brilliant. And this is published by Penguin, my publisher, so I love this book to death. So lots of writers from all kinds of backgrounds just contributing their voice and their intelligence, which makes the literature here very exciting to see.
And on the last note, before I go for a break, how about publishing world of the Singaporeans? How easy it is to publish in Singapore, especially as a creative writer? You are a publisher, you've been in the system for years, so you should be able to, one way or the other, explore with us these parts that you've been in for over a decade.
Okay, thank you. Singapore is world-renowned as a printing hub. Print production here is top-notch, great quality to be had here. The publishing is great, it's robust, but it's a humble market, right? Because the country is simply small. We are a very tech-driven country, so there's a lot of reading online, on the web, through social media. I can talk about literary publishers that publish fiction and poetry, and some of the big names are Epigram, Ethos Books, Landmark, Marshall Cavendish, Math Paper Press, and I run a small boutique press called Squircle Line Press as well. And there's an academic press, NUS Press, that runs a scholarly academic, that publishes scholarly and academic books. There are some very big publishers who are based here regionally, like Wiley, World Scientific, Pearson, and my own publisher, Penguin. Penguin Random House Southeast Asia is now here, and it's so wonderful to have them here. Also, you'll see that there are some great journals here, like the Quarterly Literary Review Singapore, that's QLRS. It's been here for, over 10 years, does fabulous work. You see most of the established and emerging writers on QLRS. Of Zoos is a nice journal that takes sort of edgy experimental work. And there's a new journal, Tiger Moth Review, that focuses on nature writing, eco-poetry. That's edited by Esther Vincent. And Asymptote is based in Taiwan, but it's edited by Li Yu Leong, who lived in Singapore for a very long time. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Desmond. We have to go for a break, and when we come back, we shall go back to your own world. Thank you for exploring the world of Singapore with us. Let's go for a break.
Hello out there. Tune in to CBA TV, the voice of East Africa and beyond. There's so many people around the world who are watching along with you.
Welcome back from the break. If you're joining us for the first time, we are in Singapore today. We've been to different parts of the globe, but today, we decide to go back to the Asian world and get to explore the world of the Singaporeans generally. That was the first part anyway. And now we are using the literary binocular of this writer, Desmond Kon. And Desmond Kon is also a Singaporean, of course. And today we shall see what he has for us. As far as his own word is concerned, who is he? How far he has gone in his writing. Not to waste much of our time, Desmond, you've published a lot of work. Among them, we have Singular Act of Endearment. You also have this very popular book, The Good Day I Died. And then there's another one that is very unique, which I want us to explore this extensively together. Anima Methodi, The Poetics of Mirroring. These three books, I need you to briefly discuss the content with us. Let's start with Singular Acts of Endearment. What inspired you to write the book? And what is the book all about?
So Singular Acts of Endearment is a book which explores a lot of the natural enclaves in Singapore. So it's the protagonist is a 20-something-year-old woman who has come back from America, and she is reacquainting herself with Singaporean life. It's all quite new to her, but she's left at home to take care of her poor grandfather, who's very old and is stricken with cancer. So there's this lovely relationship that starts getting established between an old grandfather with his granddaughter, and they also start looking at nature and life and death in different ways, and so it's all very heartwarming,
Yeah. This part is important for me because even the title, and from the way it's an award-winning book, The Good Day I Died. The Good Day I Died. That kind of someone alive talking about the day he died. This is paradoxical. What inspired you to write the title? Give us a little bit information about the content of this wonderful book.
Okay. Well, this book is about me actually dying in 2007 in Massachusetts in the USA. So I was in a house on the third floor in the attic, and I had a near-death experience, and I saw the afterlife, you know, and you know, I went into that realm, and I saw what I perceived as angelic beings, and then I came back to life. You know, I returned back to this mortal world, and so this whole book is about what that experience was like, and how my life changed after I came back. So I had finished studying world religions at Harvard, you know, so I'd already studied all these beautiful, you know, faith traditions. And so I remember that when I encountered these angelic beings, I kept trying to, you know, see it, my textbook, you know, sort of version of angels, right, matched up. And well, they were these beings of light. They were beautiful. They were full of love. Of course, I was terrified because I was there, and there were two of them. They were, you know, really tall. They were not, you know, human. It was impossible. And then you know, it's in the book I talk about looking out the window of that attic, that white room, and there were thousands of these white beings also en route to what I can only imagine was heaven, right? So that was very affirming for me, because I'm a very spiritual person. So knowing that there is a life out there waiting for me makes me very happy and grateful.
That's interesting. It's really, really a surprise to me. Someone traveling to another world and coming back to pen that unique experience. As a spiritualist, I'll call you a spiritualist. I will not call you a religialist or religionist. No. Since you study theology, sociology, and even mass communication in different universities, especially that theological concept is the spirituality is always around the content of your work. And I'm really surprised that you traveled to a spiritual world and you came back. You died and found yourself back. And I guess people will really enjoy this kind of book to get to know what you really found there. I'm not going to say anything much, and I like the way you summarize that. By the time they read the content of this very important book, The Good Day I Died, they will get to understand what message you have for them. Okay, let's go to the third one now. Anima Methody, the Poetics of Mirroring. What is this book all about? It sounds unique with the image you use there. It sounds like a kind of a creative work. But I wouldn't want to say extensively. You have the mastery of the book, and you know exactly what even pushed you to write the book. Tell us about it.
Okay, this is a new poetry form that I invented with my very good friend Eric Tinsey-Vallis. He is a co-director of Poetry Festival Singapore, and basically it's a 16-line poetry form that's split in the middle of an octave and an octave, and you've got to repeat sort of phrases or words, and that's the mirroring technique. And it's just a new form, and a lot of people engaged with it, and we're so happy that they did.
Lest I forget, you've got a lot. If we continue to be moving around, we might not finish this work. From this that you have just discussed, we automatically get to understand that you are an inventor, a literary inventor. Tell us about the sonnet that you invented last year to mark the anniversary of Singapore, and some other inventions that you have done so far.
Okay. Well, you know, Singapore is a very sort of young country, and what has emerged in the last few years, interestingly, from us contemporary poets, is that we've decided to invent a few poetic forms. You know, there are a lot of classic forms out there already, like, you know, the haiku, the tanka, the sestina. I invented this form titled the Sing Bowl, which is sort of a innovation of Twitter. And then with my very good friend Eric Vallis, I invented the Anima Methodi. It's a 16-line form with a mirroring effect because there's a repetition of certain words. And all of these inventions have been anthologized, which is very lovely because it's a testament to how quite a few writers here have decided that the forms were interesting enough to explore and engage with. Now, this is the one that happened last year, and it was to mark the Singapore bicentennial. And this was where I invented a distinctly Singaporean variation of the sonnet. So there are 14 lines, but it's called the found sonnet, where 14 words are extricated from a found text. So there are 50 writers here who wrote 50 sonnets, 14 lines each. So that gave us the 700 lines to celebrate our 700 years of history last year. So all this is very fun to do because we're creating new things. Yao Kai Chai has invented the twin cinema, which is also very exciting. In fact, it went viral just a few weeks ago with Ao Yong Wai Kit, who wrote this poem about the COVID virus, and it was covered all over because he was talking about the horrors of xenophobia that has emerged because of this pandemic.
My people will say, "So kilo beoge." I know you don't know that. I'm not, and I'm going to tell you what it means. The brevity is the beauty of anything that you are going to do in life, and that's why we're going to just round up today. You've really talked a lot. Within the short time we spent, you've captured the world you live, the world around you, and even the world beyond the normal world, which is the spiritual world. The Good Day I Die. I will never forget that book. And I will encourage our viewers to find time to get this book, The Good Day I Die. And the invention, very important, and how he managed to gather writers together to come up with that very powerful invention to mark the anniversary of Singapore. And your last message, please. This is our tradition. What's your last message for our viewers at home?
Be happy, and be yourself. Yeah, that's my message to them.
Thank you so much, Desmond. I guess this is where we have to put a curtain to this very wonderful session. Viewers at home, we have understood what Singapore is. We know Singapore is not just an industrial setting that had a swift change in the country in terms of corruption. They really fought against that, and they don't joke with that. And in terms of development, it's rapidly growing. Okay, and but from today we get to understand that there are writers, there are inventors, there are literary or creative writers hidden in that country. So don't only, whenever you travel to Singapore, don't just look at the industries. Get to see the creative world of that country. And in the next time, we will be looking at the world of another world through the binocular of another writer. Thank you for watching.